Welcome back to Broken Beautiful Me. Every week we seek out the remarkable resilience found in the wake of profound brokenness. Today we delve into the story of a man who mastered the art of choosing courage over chaos. Our guest, Zander Sprague, has walked a path through the deepest shadows of emotional loss and has emerged to teach others how to transform pain into power. His journey is a testament to the powerful truth that he shares. You don't just survive the broken moments, you use them to construct your strongest, most authentic self. Get ready to be captivated. In this episode, Zander is going to take us through the pivotal moments of learning to navigate devastating change, the profound realization that followed, and the beautiful, intentional work of reclaiming his narrative. This is an episode you absolutely will not want to miss. Dive in with me and meet Zander. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Broken Beautiful Me, stories of hope, gratitude, and resilience. And I am just extremely lucky today to have as our guest, Zander Sprague. He is a TV host, a speaker, an award-winning author, and licensed professional clinical counselor. His mission is to help millions of people make the epic choices that create an epic life. He is a member of the National Speakers Association and an author of 3 books. Welcome, Zander. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Oh, thank you so much for having me on. I'm always love a chance to be able to talk about the things that I'm passionate about, even when they may not be the most easy things to talk about.
You know, I like talking about stuff like that too. I think this is going to be a nice conversation.
I think so.
So, where would you like to start? I'm going to let you pick the point where you would like to start and tell us about you and your journey.
Sure. Well, let's start on December 9th, 1996. And at the time, I'm originally from Boston. I was living in Boston at the time. I live in the San Francisco Bay Area now, but back then I was just outside of Boston, and I got a 911 page from my dad, which was unusual. My dad was not big into technology, but he left some voicemails. I went out to dinner and had forgotten to bring my pager, so I didn't get it. So I get back. It's probably about 9 p.m. And I called my dad, and he proceeds to tell me that my older sister, Lucy, who was a law student in Chicago, had been murdered earlier in the day.
Oh my goodness.
I so clearly remember when he started talking, and it obviously was very difficult for him to tell me. And so it was a very long, protracted story with an incredible amount of detail that wasn't necessarily as relevant, but at first I'm like, okay, get to the point. Something's going on. The Boston police came to the house. I was like, I thought maybe, Lucy had been arrested, or like I had no idea, right? But I remember when he told me, when he said that she'd been murdered, just going numb, literally from the top of my head down. Like I just honestly had, to use a computer term, the 404 not found, like just didn't know how to process that info. And so I lived about 7 miles away from my parents. I got my car to go into the house, obviously. And as most children do, I underestimated the resilience of my parents. Now, I was aware that losing a child is the worst thing that can happen to a parent. And maybe the only time that might not be so true is if you happen to have an incredibly long life, and let's say you're 95 years old and your son or daughter is 75, although it's still not easy, you might go, okay, that's within the realm of when people might pass away, and I'm living a very long life, so I get that. But anyway, I was trying to think of I figured my parents would be catatonic in the corner. And I was like, it's up to me to figure out how to deal with all of this. Luckily, my parents, as I said, were a lot more resilient, and although very devastated, were able to, be a lot more assistance than I had originally given them credit for. So the story doesn't go on too long. What happened was my sister was in her apartment in Chicago, and a maintenance worker who should not have had access to some passkeys, we believe, let himself in to do a petty theft. It was exam period, so she happened to be in her apartment. Normally she would have already left to go to law school. They surprised each other. He strangled her and jumped out her 4th floor window to a 2nd floor roof, where he broke his ankle. The police had him right away. There was no question who did this. He happened to jump out the window with a monogrammed hand towel of my sister's. So there was like one of those things, there was no question who had done this. 10 days later, he hung himself in the Cook County prison. So that spared my family what would have been an incredibly public trial. At the time, my father was a sitting district court judge in Massachusetts. So, and the man who killed my sister had spent 8 of the prior 10 years in Joliet State Prison, had a 4-page rap sheet. So, judge's daughter gets killed by ex-con. There was a lot of media around it when it happened, but had we had a trial, it probably would have been on like court TV and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So, luckily my family was spared having to go through that. I will say, with my father being a judge, I had an above average understanding of some of the vagaries of our judicial system, and understood that there is a lot that had to go right in order for the outcome to be a conviction, right? And said it's not just that. This could be a 20+ year process with appeals and stuff like that. So I'm personally happy we didn't have to go through that.
Yes.
After Lucy died, I began to really understand that being a sibling survivor is an incredibly lonely experience. Lots of people, as I said, I was living in Boston. My parents were living in Boston. Lots of people know my parents. I'd run into them on the street, and they would ask how my parents were. Totally logical question. Not one person asked how I was. I started to wonder if my loss was not as, was meaningless, didn't mean anything, was insignificant. And the answer to that is, of course, no. It is equally as significant. It's different, but it is equally significant. The longest relationship we have in our life is with our siblings.
Yes.
And kind of as I referenced before, we all, I think, in our mind, with our siblings, have an idea of, well, when we get to a certain age, and I'm not going to name, say for different people, but we'll say, let's say 75, 80 years old, perhaps in our mind it becomes more acceptable, not easier, but more like, hey, this is this time period where it is obviously a lot more likely that my brother or sister will pass away. I was 28. My sister Lucy was 30. My younger sister was 25. This was not when this chapter was supposed to end.
No. And that's a very interesting point that you bring forward about sibling grief. And one of the things that I think I had the most anxiety about as a bereaved parent was that I was not going to handle this right for my younger son.
Absolutely.
I was so scared that I was going to screw it up.
Yeah. And I hear that a lot. I wrote 2 books about sibling loss. One was for siblings, called Making Lemonade, Choosing a Positive Pathway After Losing Your Sibling. And the other one, which you see over my shoulder, Why Don't They Cry? Understanding Your Living Child's Grief. I wrote for parents because in my work with siblings and stuff, I'm always meeting parents, and they honestly, to the person, will come up and say, I lost my son or daughter, but I have other living children. Why don't they cry? They were asking me because I'm out there talking about sibling loss. And so I wrote the book for all of you parents who, I'm so sorry, have lost a child, but have other living children, because I wanted to try and help explain my experience and the experience of other siblings that I've worked with, so that you parents can have an understanding and talk about some of the things that you're unaware of, but are really important to understand, and to talk about why you won't see us cry, why we won't grieve in front of you, how to share some of your journey and stuff like that. Look, I was an adult. I was out having my own life. Watching my parents be so sad was devastating.
Yeah.
It's been 29 years, so I can say that truly time does. I don't want to say it heals it. I have more tools at my disposal that help me deal with the grief and help me figure out and recognize when there's something that's triggering me that may be hard. So time does really help you. And again, it's not healed, but it's more, I like to say, just, I have more tools. Like anything, if you have tools, you understand and recognize, hey, a birthday's coming up, a holiday's coming up. But I know I've been through this. I know how to recognize that. I know how to perhaps keep the train, at least most of the wheels on the track, and not have the whole thing come off.
Yeah. And as parents, sometimes being caught in the tornado of grief, it's just natural that we sometimes overlook things that are happening with our children, because I can say, as a bereaved parent, there was many days I was just trying to get through the day.
Absolutely. And
That was
yeah, and my experience was, I saw what my parents were going through. I can't imagine what they were going through. I could witness it, but I'm although I am a parent, I'll knock on wood, both my daughters are still alive, and hopefully will be for an incredibly long period of time, where I'm long since gone and all of that. But I also, even when I needed my parents, and I was lucky. I was close to. I'm close to my really close to my mom. I was close to my dad. He's since passed, but I wasn't about to add to the crap sandwich that they had been served and go, "Hey, I need you." Now, probably a couple years later, I was talking to my mom about it, and she goes, "Well, I'm your mom. Of course I'll be here." But I noticed something interesting, and I'll ask you this question, whether this resonates with you. In my book, Why Don't They Cry, I talk about the vicious circle of caring. And what I mean by that is, I see my mom and dad grieving, so I want to take care of them. They see me sad, they want to take care of me. The problem is everyone's trying to take care of everyone else, but no one is taking care of themselves. And if you aren't attending to your own grief, you're not going to be able to be working your way through it, and therefore you can't help someone else. It kind of goes back to Maslow's hierarchy, right? If some of those basic things aren't taken care of, you can't take
Yeah.
care of someone else. And when it comes to grief, I've got a lot of experience in this. I talk about it all the time. That vicious circle of caring is, and again, did you notice that in yourself, that like you're
Well,
you've
first
seen
of
it?
all, first of all, I've never heard it quite described that way. It's the perfect description. And yes, I did that. My son did it. My
Yeah,
husband did it. We all did that little circle
yeah,
until we recognized that I didn't have any tools in my toolbox.
yeah,
And so somebody could ask me to come and repair, but I only got a box. I don't have anything in it.
yeah. No,
And so
totally.
that was the moment that we recognized that we needed to go to counseling, grief counseling.
Absolutely.
Best thing we ever did as a family. We didn't go sitting together, and Brendan had an opportunity to go in on his own, which I thought was important for his autonomy. But yeah, I mean, I had nothing. I
Yeah,
didn't know what I was doing.
absolutely. And in one, I want to make sure I put this out there because it's so important. I sit on the board of an organization called the Compassionate Friends, which is for families that have lost a child, a sibling, or a grandchild. And I didn't discover TCF, the Compassionate Friends, until I was 19 years into my journey. And I wish I would have known about them before, because our sibling community is so strong. And there is something to be said for, as a parent, a grandparent, or a sibling. I can only talk about the siblings, but I know it is for parents and stuff, to be in a room with other people who understand. And the importance there is you get to talk about the thing that's going on for you now and not have to spend 20 minutes explaining to your friend, who is such a good friend and is there to support you, but they just don't get it. So, for example, as a sibling, if I said to one of my, I'm with some of my siblings or I'm talking to other sibling survivors, and I go, oh my God, my mom is just calling me all the time and freaks out when I don't call her back when I've gotten someplace. There's guaranteed there's another sibling goes, yeah. So now I get to talk about that. And what I'm talking about is sometimes as adult children, your sibling dies, and all of a sudden, understandably, your parents worry about you greatly. And you've been out having your own independent life, and all of a sudden your mom or dad or both of them say, whenever you leave your house, apartment, or wherever you're living, you need to call and tell me you're going to the store, and then call and tell me that you made it to the store, and then you forget, and then your parents are war dialing you, your phone is just blowing up, you're like, oh my gosh, right? And they're about
Yeah.
to call the police, and it just like, and that happens. And all of a sudden you're like, wow, I didn't have to do this for years, and now I have to do it. We understand where the parents are coming from, but it doesn't make it easier, right? So being able to go into a place where people get where you are, people who further down the road, right, who can say, oh yes, here's some tools, here's what I did. But just talk
Mm,
to people who understand.
yeah.
The Compassion Friends is such an important organization for families, because like when we have our national conference, it's hard for me. I'm going to a grief conference, but for me, it's a celebration of going to be with my fellow siblings and have 3 days where I'm around people who validate my loss, who I can talk to, people I can help. Um, just it's honestly, it's like the family I never knew I needed. And
Yeah.
go ahead.
And the Compassionate Friends it's an international
It
organization,
is.
right? They have chapters all over the world.
They do. They do. It actually started over in England, and
Yeah.
um, I'm in the United States, so obviously we have the United States. It sounds like you might be from Canada. I could be wrong.
I am from Canada, but I live in the United States.
Okay, so yeah, so there are local chapters all over the United States for parents. There's monthly meetings. The siblings. We have less in-person meetings. I'm working on getting more across the United States, but we have Zoom meetings almost every day of the week that siblings can dial into, and you're just in a room and you get to talk about and support other people who want to where you need support, and they're so important. As a sibling survivor, I think unacknowledged grief has a profound effect on our lives.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned I'm a licensed professional clinical counselor. I could never do a study that would have the proper efficacy to say, well, so and so lost their brother, and afterwards, unfortunately, we're doing self-destructive behaviors, perhaps drinking too much, perhaps taking drugs, doing dangerous things. And that was because they lost their brother or sister, because there are obviously there was a whole family history of alcoholism. So you can't say this caused it. However, I could say anecdotally, I can say I certainly have worked with sibling survivors where the way that unacknowledged grief is expressed is sometimes not the healthiest for them. And once they find the compassionate friends, here's this outlet where people go, I see you, I am sorry.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
another thing I want to say is, if you know someone who's lost a child or a sibling or something, there isn't a miracle sentence that will make it better for me, and I don't
No.
have a miracle sentence for you. But there is so much power in people just acknowledging the loss. There's benefit on both sides. I
Yes.
always thought, before Lucy died, I thought that I never understood why we had receiving lines, and I thought it was just the most barbaric, cruel thing. Like, I'm going through a line. What am I going to say to these people? But when I was on the receiving end of it, I realized that the receiving line at a memorial service, a funeral, whatever, serves an incredible cathartic purpose on both sides. One, in your greatest hours of need, here are people acknowledging your loss. You are also
Yes.
acknowledging their loss, and that on both sides is what needs to happen. They're there because they want to say, I too feel this loss. I too am sad.
Mm-hmm.
As you can tell, I'm a little passionate about my sibling survivors.
No, listen, I am just so glad that we're having this conversation. And one of the things I know, the Compassionate Friends, and then I think there's another group called the Bereaved Parents of the USA,
USA,
and
yeah.
that's strictly in the United States. They both have, and this is what I loved. It just wasn't for parents who've lost a child, that they recognized that this is a family system and a family loss, and that sibling loss is so important to address and to give space. Um, And I remember early on, my husband and I went to, one of the events that happened in the summer, and I did not bring my son. And I remember looking at the sibling group as I was walking by the room as they were getting ready.
Yeah.
And I mean, he was a little young. I'm not sure how he would have felt about it at that moment in time. Now he's an adult. Um, but I was just so happy to see it because I don't know, there's something about leaving the siblings behind that like I have tears in my eyes now just thinking about it,
Yeah.
because it was it was such a trigger for me. I was so worried about making a mistake. I was so worried about it, and I didn't have anybody that I could go to and say, "What do I do? Am I gonna make a mistake?" Now, we did go to counseling, as I said, but in that group setting, you have a room full of people
Yeah.
who look at you and you say, your son or daughter's next door and they're talking with other siblings and you're here talking with other parents. And that sense of community is what heals.
Oh, absolutely. And again, that acknowledge being someplace where your loss is acknowledged, where it is safe for you to talk about. I don't know, but for me, uh, I can bring a sledgehammer to any conversation, because if I start to talk about my books and I tell people I've written 2 books about sibling loss, that's like a sledgehammer to any conversation. People don't know what to say. There's all of a sudden this deafening silence of what do I, and again, I talk about Lucy almost every day.
Yeah.
We all have a choice. Every day you have a choice whether you want to talk about your son or not.
Mm-hmm.
You can choose. Some days it's just a hard day and you're like, nope, but that doesn't mean you don't want to talk about it. um,
Yeah.
Share, we had a memorial service for Lucy. We have my family has a summer place in Maine, and the whole community, we did a memorial service up there because a lot of them couldn't make it to the memorial service in Boston over the winter and all of that. And I just told people, come talk to us. Tell us stories. Tell us what you remember. And oh, by the way, I love Lucy very much, but she was no saint. We are not going to canonize her. You can tell me
Right.
the times where she wasn't nice. I say that all the time. For some reason, someone dies, all of a sudden they can't do any wrong, right? Well,
Yeah.
I love Lucy very much, but there were days where she was not nice to me. There were mean things that she did. That's what siblings do to each other, right? So
Yep.
I tell I tell the stories, the good and the not so good, the ones where she doesn't look so good. Why? Because that was her life. That was our relationship. One of the things I want to make sure I share with you and with your audience is death is part of life. People are going to die. Sometimes children die, sometimes siblings die. Keep in mind that I choose not to focus on the dot that is the end of Lucy's life, but I want to celebrate the rainbow that was her life, because it's so much
Right.
more rewarding to talk about all her whole life. I'm not forgetting that she's dead, but I'm also not just solely focused on I lost my sister. Because there's 30
Yeah.
huge years of wonderful things that Lucy did and who she was, that feels so much more rewarding to talk about and celebrate than just my sister died.
I love that you're bringing this up because I wrote something about this, and I titled it "Say Their Name,"
Yeah.
because I was finding that well, one of the questions when you lose a child, when you're in a social situation and you're at a party and you're just making general conversation, and then someone says, "And how many children do you have?"
Oh yeah.
And then you catch your breath and you're mentally doing these gymnastics. I want to acknowledge Stephen because I am still his mom and he is still my son, but I don't
Absolutely.
want to make the person feel uncomfortable at this party.
Absolutely. But here's the thing. Sadly, in the US, we treat death like the most communicable disease in the world, which is if oh, you experience death, if I come up and talk to you about it, it's going to rub off on me, I'm going to catch it, right? And we don't know what we just are horrendous at dealing with death. We are sort of like ostriches, put our head in the sand and pretend it didn't happen. And I don't know what to say. As I said earlier, there is no miracle sentence that will make the loss of Lucy better for me, and I don't have one for you, but that's okay. Simply saying
Yeah.
I am so sorry, right? I
Right.
too have had 29 years of. How many siblings do you have?
Yeah.
I say your name. I could not be more out there. I've written 2 books. I am sit on the board of the Compassionate Friends as a sibling representative. I do podcasts about it. I talk about Lucy all the time. That's for me. That's what's important. That's how I keep her alive. I'm just a little busier in my life because I have stuff to do for Lucy. I'm technically the middle child, but now I'm the oldest child because Lucy is dead. Stephen is dead, but he's still your son. He will always be your son. You will always be his mom.
Always.
And I think sometimes I guess I'm like, look, let's get over the awkward. I'm going to mention it. It is, as I said, like a sledgehammer to a conversation. But then I give people permission to go, yeah, it's awkward. I understand you don't know what to say. That's okay. We don't have, generally in the United States, we just don't have any process about dealing death. There are religions and cultures that have processes for that. In the Jewish religion, there's sitting Shiva.
Mm-hmm.
In Hinduism, there's a whole process to acknowledge and think about the dead and talk about the dead. And it doesn't mean when that's over that it's just you're all miraculously better, but there's some process. Structure is really important for how to get through something. There's no handbook on grief. It is a tidal wave of emotions, and you can go months and be okay. I don't know about you, but there are times I'm driving in the car or whatever, and a song will come on. Trains off the tracks for just a little bit.
Yeah.
And that's
music does it for me too.
Yeah. Or there's someplace you drive by, maybe there's some kind of a olfactory, a smell of something, a particular food, a perfume, a cologne, something. And I say in my Making Lemonade book, when you have a sad reminder, be happy that you get to remember. I treat those moments as unexpected opportunities to remember Lucy. Doesn't mean that I don't cry. It doesn't mean that I'm not sad, but I really try to say, I'm grateful for this opportunity to think about Lucy. I didn't know I was going to have that opportunity today when that song came on, or when I saw things that reminded me of her. Because again, the way we keep them alive in our life and in our heart is to talk about them, is to acknowledge that even when it's tough. I remember about 6 months after Lucy died, my dad said, as your dad, it is my desire to lock you and your younger sister up in the house so nothing bad can happen to you. But I realized that I can't do that because you're both adults and you're both out living your life as you should. And I
Mhm.
really appreciated that honesty that my dad had about saying, as a parent, here's what I want to do. This horrible
Yeah.
thing happened. As a parent, um, I just want to protect you. And if you don't leave the house, no one else can hurt you.
Mm.
But I also appreciated that he took it further and said, but I know I can't do that. And for me,
Yeah.
it brought me closer to my dad to understand a little more of how he was dealing with this. Um,
Right.
my dad and I went out to Chicago from Boston the day after Lucy died. We talked to the police. We went to her apartment to collect, um, her passport, her license, and essential documents. We had to go to the morgue and identify her and talk to the DA and we had to do all these things. It was a whirlwind day. Um, my dad and I talked about that day no less than 75 times in the following 5 years for us to process, because we took a whole lot of stuff in, but just didn't
Yeah.
have the capacity or the ability to so that was for he and I would sort of talk our way through some of the grief, but it was a way of
Yeah.
processing, and each of us should, by having that conversation together, the little things that he saw or recognized, or the things I saw and recognized, helped both of us sort of fill in more the picture of all that information and helped us process what that day was for each of us.
Hmm. And it's important, especially like when as you're discussing, it's an unexpected death. And it's like things are happening and you're outside of your body and you're trying to, like, you're just trying to figure out, okay, what do I need to do next? Who do I need to talk to? What arrangements do I need to make? And what a beautiful thing for you and your father to feel comfortable enough in your relationship to have that conversation over and over and over again, knowing that you were processing your grief as you were doing so.
Absolutely. And it yeah, it's interesting when you have a loss like that. Um, right after it happens, there were so many people around, right? It was like, just I remember so many people in my parents' house, and I'd be having a conversation with one person, and it was like that was all that was going on. There was all this, hubbub around me, but I'm just talking to you. And then you'd be like, I gotta go. And I'm like, what do you mean you just got here? No, I've been here 2 hours, right? Like, but I wasn't talking to my friend or whatever. It's great that they were there. But then after the service, it was like falling off a cliff.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, no one was around. And I'm a bit of a bossy friend. And I said to my friends, I want you to call me and just keep calling me and ask me out. If I don't want to go out today, it doesn't mean I don't want to go out. It just means today's a tough day. But just keep inviting me to stuff, because I knew I couldn't just sit at home and do nothing. I took a couple extra days after Lucy's service, and it sucked so hard because I was sitting in my apartment by myself, just
Mhm.
chewing on this horrible thing that had happened. And I'm like, I can't do that. So I went back to work. Now, I was not very productive. I can assure you. Luckily, I had a really good manager who's like, you're here. I get that we're not going to expect too much of you, but I had some place to go.
Yeah.
And that was important. I think it's also important, if you've experienced a loss, exercise is your friend. It is. I remember how hard it was to just get out of bed, right? I
Mhm.
had to focus on. I love this quote from Sleepless in Seattle, when Tom Hanks is on the phone with the phone psychologist, and she says, "How are you doing?" And he says, "Well, I'm breathing in and I'm breathing out." and soon I won't have to think about that, or something thereabout. But that's sort of the gist of it. And I was like, wow, I so get that. That's where I am, is just breathe in, breathe out, get through this moment.
Yeah.
And then I won't have to, there was a time where I didn't have to think about it. But when grief brings on a cycle of depression, which is you're depressed, so you're tired, so you sleep more, so that makes you more depressed, so you sleep more. And circles are really important in everything. Everything's a circle here. Anyway, uh, it but I remember when I dragged myself out of bed. I went to the gym. The first day, it totally was terrible. I just, but I did feel so much better. And what I discovered was exercise releases endorphins in us. Endorphins are our own natural antidepressant. Is it going to solve everything? No, but it will break that cycle of just not wanting to get out of bed. And then
Right.
that helps you to start to be able to put pieces back together and return to some normalcy in your life, where you're like, okay, I can, as a mom, you're like, perhaps I can get back to cooking one meal a day,
Yeah.
if that's what you were doing, or showing up at my younger son's event, be it a sports game or some kind of a school presentation. But like, you're like, okay. And it can seem overwhelming. And I think the biggest thing, tell the people that you're talking to, give them permission to not know what to say.
Yeah.
So important.
I have to tell you, what you said to your friends, it kind of just stopped me in my tracks, where you said, call me, keep calling me. And I may not be up to it today, but don't think I won't be up to it tomorrow.
Yeah.
I did not do that, to my own detriment.
Yeah.
I should have been more honest with the people who really loved me.
Mm-hmm.
And I should have said, look, I don't even know if I'm getting dressed today.
Yeah.
So let's just leave it at that. But don't forget to call me, because I still love you. And I feel, as a bereaved parent, and you're the first person I've ever told this to, but I feel as a bereaved parent, in some ways, that is one of the things that I wish I had handled differently. I know why it evolved as it did, because I was in so much pain. But looking back now, I know that there was people that wanted to be let in that I didn't let in, and I
Yeah.
should have.
Yeah. And it's you as the compassionate friends say, you need not walk alone. It feels very lonely, very isolating.
It does.
As a parent, everyone, oh my gosh, you lost your child, and people are, as I said, acknowledging it. People sadly are not acknowledging sibling loss. And here's a startling statistic for you. In the United States, there's over 1 million new sibling survivors every single year. Now, that's across all age groups, but
Oh my gosh.
closer to 1.3 million. And I get to that number by looking at the daily death rates and looking at average number of children in a family, which is 1.94 or something. So we'll call it, it's close enough to call it 2.
Right.
And I did some math and stuff like that. But yeah, 1 million new sibling survivors. And I like to say that
1 million new reasons for you to keep doing this work.
absolutely. And we're everywhere, and yet we're nowhere. Because it's not like there's a button that we can wear that says, I'm a sibling survivor. So as I walk down the street, I can go, oh my God, there's part of my chosen family. Let me just see how they're doing. When I meet people, I ask what they do. They ask what I do, and I always work a way in to talk about my work with siblings. Why? Because so often they too have lost a sibling, and often they haven't had a chance to talk about it. I can't tell you the number of multi-hour conversations I've gotten into because I'm the first person that they've gotten to talk to about their brother or their sister. Some families, after that child sibling dies, it there's no mention, there's no pictures, no one talks about it. And here's this person dying to talk about, I shouldn't say dying, but very eager to be able to talk about and remember and
Yeah.
talk about this. I can't imagine anything worse than me never getting to say Lucy's name around my family, like as if she never
Oh,
existed.
I mean, I can't imagine that either. Stephen in our house is kind of a daily part of our conversation too.
As he should be.
You know, we make funny jokes about kind of his quirky ways, and of course, his brother has a whole bunch of stories, and they are both hockey goalies, and but we integrate it because Stephen is still our child, and
Of
we
course.
love him.
And Stephen is
And
still a
why
brother.
wouldn't we talk about him?
I couldn't agree more. Like, I just can't imagine not talking about it. When I am talking to people and like, I can't believe you're talking about your sister so much. And I'm like, why wouldn't I?
Right.
She was my sister. I'm keeping her. She is so alive. My daughters obviously never knew Lucy. However, I said, when we were pregnant, I said to my parents and my sister, I said, let's talk about Lucy. Let's share who Lucy was, so my daughters will know who she is. My daughters will say, "There's Aunt Lucy. She died before I was ever born," but they know all these facts. My family has a charitable gift foundation, where we grant to nonprofits in Lucy's memory. They sit on the board of that. They fully know who Lucy is. They can talk about their aunt who they never ever met.
Mm.
My
That is
mom,
incredibly beautiful that they are part of the legacy of your
well,
sister.
they have to be. I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, what am I going to say? Hey, you know, your aunt, your grandmother, grandfather, and I sit here, but you can't know anything about. No, um, my mom, uh, my mom's mother died 3 weeks before she graduated from high school. I grew
Mm.
up knowing about my maternal grandmother, who I obviously never ever met, and yet my cousins, when I would say something, assuming that they knew too, their parents never talked about their mom. And they're like, "How do you know that?" And I'm like, because I talked to my mom about it, and I was curious about who this woman, who her mother was, who my grandmother I never knew. Who was she? What did she do? What did she like? What did you? And she did some incredible things. Why wouldn't I? I wrote about her in one of my college essays. If you could
Yeah.
have lunch with anyone living or dead, I said I'd have it with my grandmother because she did these cool things and I never knew her, but I want to. Um, so I think that's for me and my family. That was really important to say. Look, you aren't going to know Lucy, but she is part of all of our lives. It is part of the work that we all do, and you need to be part of this. And the fact that they can talk about Lucy and have facts and stories and stuff is great. Why
Mhm.
shouldn't we?
I couldn't agree more. And I just to have that comfort level, I think that we need to keep sending that message home that we should be able to talk about our loved ones who have passed. Um, Reclaiming your life requires a shift in perspective.
Absolutely.
So, what was the absolute hardest internal barrier that you had to break down to truly commit to building a new life? And what specific first step did you take that locked your commitment in?
Okay, now here's a good story. For about, I don't know, 3 or 4 months, I was just wrestling with, why did this happen? And I remember exactly, like, I can point out exactly where I was on the Massachusetts Turnpike in Brighton, Mass,
Mm.
when I just had kind of this epiphany, which was, I will never know why this happened. And I need to let that go, because I can spend the rest of my life struggling with that. And that is just not something I will have an answer to.
Yeah.
And when there was such a weight lifted in that moment where I'm like, I'm just letting go of this. It's almost like I just threw it out the window. I said, I'm not going, I will never know why this happened. So I need to just I need to let go of that, because I was stuck there.
Mhm.
I joked earlier about, I keep talking about circles and stuff. A big part of when I work with my clients in my mental health practice, I like the concept of Gestalt's closure theory. And Gestalt was a psychologist, and he did this experiment where he showed people these pictures of 10 circles. And he said, how many of these circles are complete circles? And some of them were really big, but there was only one complete circle, but there were a lot that were just a tiny bit. And it is human nature to go, I need to just close that. I need it to be closed. And I'm a big proponent that there are things in our life where there's this circle, and once we figure out how to close that circle, we get to move on. We're just stuck
Yeah.
in that moment. So for me, that why there was a big gap, and I needed to figure out how to close that, because I was stuck there. I was stuck on why this happened.
That was a big gap for me too.
Yeah, it's a big gap for
Yeah.
like
I
almost everyone.
I struggled I struggled a lot with that, and months later I went to counseling, and I said, I keep having this recurring dream night after night, night after night. And I think that I'm sliding back. I
Mm-hmm.
think I'm going in the wrong direction here. There's something not working, because this is, I'm going right back to the day.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, well, you're not going back to the part of the day that you viewed before.
Mm-hmm.
You're going back to the day, to the part where you're ready to look at now.
Yeah.
And you're strong enough to look at it now. And
Yeah.
so your mind is telling you you're ready for this.
Right.
Take your time.
Yep.
But you're ready.
Right.
And that allowed me to let go of that piece of, because that was the big question in that dream. Why?
Mm-hmm.
How could this happen? Why?
Right.
And that day, I remember walking out of the session and sitting in my car for about 20 minutes, just kind of letting it sink in, that I felt so much lighter, because I just decided, okay, enough. I'm never going to get an answer that is going to satisfy me.
Mm-hmm.
Enough. You can't do that to yourself anymore.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
it is a clarifyingly freeing moment
Yes.
when you're like, I accept that I will not have this answer, but
Yeah.
depending on what you believe, maybe when I die and hopefully I go up to heaven, I will get that answer. But here's what I do know: I'm just a little busier because I have some work to do on behalf of Lucy. And it is so rewarding to do good things in Lucy's memory and help other people and help other sibling survivors, because I just don't want people to feel so alone, because you don't need to.
They don't. It's incredibly beautiful when I hear you say that you just have a little extra work to do for Lucy. I call my work Stephen's Ripple, and it's a beautiful thing to do.
It feels good, doesn't it?
It feels marvelous.
Yeah.
It feels so wonderful. And there are days when I am working with someone and I finish up and it's almost like he's sitting right next to me in the chair, kind of cheering me on. That's how I feel.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And as I said, it feels so much better to celebrate the rainbow that was Lucy's life, that rainbow that was Stephen's life.
Yes.
Than to just focus on the fact there's a black dot at the end of that rainbow.
Right.
You know, I mean, yes, there's not a day goes by that I don't know that Lucy died. But that's so not all of who she is.
Right. And it's difficult to move forward when you're only focused on that dot. Absolutely. And that's not a statement of judgment at all, because no. I've been on the dot for longer than I would care to admit. But it does require you to be able to see that you need to take care of yourself.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's what happens is if we attend to our own grief, then we can help the other people in our family when they need our help. And, for parents, talk to your kids. Tell them what's going on. Tell them that you're having a hard day. Tell them that the train came off the tracks because you heard a song. You want to know what? We have the same thing. As a family, if you share those things, those people that love you so, your younger son, of course, is there, and maybe he gives you a hug. Maybe he just he does something and acknowledges and shares that moment in that space with you. And that's how as a family and as a parent, who's a bereaved parent, you can help your kids come in, right? It all depends on your relationship with your children and stuff. I had the same fear. I don't want to pile more on my parents, right? But my parents are like, well, I'm your parent. Of course I'm here for you. I know I still, and it's, again, almost 30 years, that when I saw my mom and dad, and now just my mom, but when I see her sad about Lucy, it just breaks my heart, and I want to take her pain away. I know my mom wants to take my pain away, but again, that vicious circle of caring. Yeah, it's convenient to go, let me focus on you so I don't have to focus on me. But the fact of the matter is, we all have to walk our own journey.
We do.
And here's the thing. I don't know about you, but I hate it when people go, oh, you're not over losing your sister? No, I will never get over the fact that Lucy's dead. I'm working my way through it, most days better than others.
Yeah.
But no, I'm not getting over. Are you going to get over losing Stephen?
No.
I don't even, it's like, honestly, a foreign concept. How do I get over losing my sister?
Well, and the getting over part, I think, is what sticks with me. And like, it was never a consideration. Like, what are you saying? I'm going to get over this.
And I'm telling you, I hear that all the time from the siblings, from the parents I work with, where And we are. And perhaps it's because we've experienced it and heard it 1,000 times. It literally is like, what do you mean get over? like, like, holy moly, that's just like.
I know it boggles the mind, but it
Does. Like,
again
it's
isn't.
not found. It's like you go, get over. I just what? Anyway.
Yeah,
Oh
it's
my.
I try to. I don't know about you, but I always try if someone is making a genuine effort to talk to me about grief.
Mm-hmm.
They can say things that however it comes out, if they're coming to me and they're showing up, we're going to work through whatever that conversation is.
Absolutely.
But there are some people who are just time for you to get over it. That's what I can't abide by. I have to.
Preaching to the choir, I'm telling you. like honestly, yeah, I get it, right? I know it's an awkward conversation. I know people have questions. That's fine. Again, I talk about it. I choose every day. I have a choice every day whether I want to talk about Lucy. You have a choice every day whether you want to talk about Stephen.
Mm-hmm.
And there are days where you go, yeah, nope, can't talk about it. But it doesn't mean you never want to talk about it. It just means in this moment, it's not a good time. And that's where telling people it's okay to come talk to us. The experience I was talking about, my family's home in Maine, we went up there for the first time over Memorial Day after Lucy died, and we kind of had all of our grief battle armor on because we've all these people who knew, and we thought they're going to come up, and so we were all like just mentally prepared for it. And no one who we hadn't already been talking to came up and said anything. And it was like, why is no one talking to us? And that's honestly why I said it's okay to talk to us.
Yeah.
You know, it's like you're not going to catch it. We are here. We are actually doing okay. And again, choice is so important for your grief. You have a choice. There is no one right way to grieve. We're all going to walk our own path. Some people are going to work through stuff a little faster. Other people aren't. Other people are going to be stuck. But here's the thing. Life is a participatory sport. You had an option. You could have pulled that proverbial blanket over your head and said, woe is me, and this is horrible. And it is. I'm not discounting that. But 10 years later, when you decide to take the blanket off, guess what? 10 years of your life just went by.
Yeah. I always think, what would Stephen say to me wasting that time? I think a lot about how he would respond. I kind of have this quiet conversation with him. What do you think about this? What do you think about what I'm doing next?
Yeah. And I know Lucy would say, stop being modeling. Like deal with it. I'm gone. I'm not coming back.
Yeah.
But you're still here. Live your life.
Exactly. I remember early in grief days when I was writing a lot, and my son Brendan came into my office one day and he found me in tears. I was writing about something that was super emotional.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, I don't want you to think that this is not normal. It's normal for me to cry. And I said, I want you to think about, I'm just letting steam off my grief kettle. That is it. That's what's happening right now.
Yeah, absolutely. An interesting fact about crying. When we cry, we are, through our tears, are releasing stress hormones and stuff. So there is an actual physically cathartic way for us to why we're doing that. That's why there are the moments where everything seems fine and then you find yourself bawling your eyes out. Why? Because our bodies are incredible machines of homeostasis. So we can either attend to it, or our body will get to a point where it's like, all right, we're getting rid of, we got too much of these stress hormones. We're going to make you get rid of it, right? And crying is fine. And I tell people, look, if you're talking to me and I cry, it's okay. Crying is it is part of the grief process. It is part of our life.
Right.
It may feel uncomfortable to hold that space for me. Maybe I'm holding the space for you because what we're talking about makes you really sad. It triggers something and you cry. Just be there in the moment with that person. Hold the space gently for them. Because you want to know what that means so much more than going, oh my God, you're crying, and bailing.
Right. And normalizing it. So I do remember several other times he stuck his head in and just said, steam off the grief kettle. And I was like, thumbs up. But 10 years later, we go to the Avett Brothers on New Year's Eve, which was one of Stephen's favorite bands. And I love them too. And one of Stephen's favorite songs was, they were playing packed arena. It was just, and I couldn't contain myself because it was his favorite song and everything and then I just was crying. And I'm so thankful for this, because we tried to do the best we could with the work of grief leading up to that moment, that Brendan wasn't horrified by the fact that his mother was in a heap. He just put his arm around me and he started singing the song with me.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the moment passed and on we went with our evening.
Yeah.
And so grief and joy can coexist.
Absolutely. And, Lucy really loved the theater. She loved acting. One of her favorite songs was All That Jazz from Cabaret. And
love it.
When the movie came out, I went to the movie and there's Catherine Zeta-Jones, singing and all that jazz. And I'm with you. I was so with you because I'm 1 minute into the movie. I'm there by myself in the dark. I am bawling my eyes out because I'm like, Lucy would have loved this. But I was fine with that. Right?
Yeah.
Like the same way you go to that concert and that song comes on and you're like, I am probably going to cry my eyes out, but that's okay. Because I was there watching the movie with Lucy and remembering Lucy and thinking she would like this. And I'm doing this for Lucy. And yeah.
I love that.
Getting a little misty here, but anyway.
No, listen, this is our space. We can cry, we can do whatever we want. I wish that we had more time. I've been reading some of your quotes. I want to read your book, and I want to talk about your book, Epic. I wanted to have more time with that. Could you possibly come back again?
I would be delighted to be able to come back again.
Okay.
Talk about Epic. Talk about more about. Look, again, part of my work is talking about grief. I think it's really important.
You know what? I think it's probably the most important conversation that we can have these days, because there's grief about the loss of a loved one, but there's other grief.
Absolutely.
Grief for, changes in your life, changes where you live, things that people are struggling with on a global stage. So grief, I think, is a super important conversation. And I would love for you to come back so that we can continue. I have so many other questions. I don't want to finish this, but I have to. I have another appointment.
I do too. I've got to go conduct therapy in a few minutes. So, anyway, yeah, I would, if you'd have me back, I'd be delighted to. There's a lot to talk about.
There certainly is. Thank you so much. And we will have all of your connections for your website and how to get your books and everything in the show notes. So thank you so much for being here with me.
Thank you so much.